I'm Tim with the Geekedupgaming Review Group, and today we're going to take a look at the Pathfinder role-playing game Beginner Box from Paizo Publishing. If you've not seen this box, it now has a new book inside, this little label right here. And the new book that they give you is a transition guide to go from the Beginner Box over to the core rulebook, which we will also be showing you guys the core rulebook and the GM screen. I'll show you guys all the cool stuff they have in the inside of the GM screen as far as stats and stuff to help you with die rolls and stuff if you're new to the RPG world. We are also new to the RPG world, so we'll all be kind of learning at the same time, so we'll be all going at kind of the same pace, hopefully. But the first thing we're going to focus on in the beginner box is going to be a game master, because that's the hardest role, the hardest job or position in role-playing. But it also says it's the most rewarding, and we're going to go in and see why it's the most rewarding to be a GM and why I think it's the most fun. That's the role that I chose, was to be a GM, and I'm letting everyone else be the heroes because I think that not to toot my own horn or anything, but I think I could be the most creative and I can think of stuff up on the fly. One of my heroes, they wanted to know if they could stand on a statue, and it was like the very first thing we ever did on our very first scenario, and I was like, sure, roll an acrobatics check on a difficulty of 10. Like, it wasn't that big of a deal to make it too difficult, so they rolled a d20, got the check, whatever. They could stand on the statue, and then they had to do the same check as an action to get off the statue. Just kind of like a silly thing for them to do. So let's go ahead and go over to the beginner box. I'll show you guys all the components and everything, and if you guys are brand new to the Pathfinder RPG, the beginner box is definitely where to start, because you're going to get a bunch of pawns, 3 books actually, the transition guide, and then the hero handbook and the GM guide. So let's go ahead and go over to the box and check out everything we're going to get inside. Alright guys, so I have just the lid here, and like I said, what we're going to focus on is the Game Master's Guide, because it is the most challenging part of being in a role-playing game. So we're going to look at the Pathfinder's book here. It's got some combat quick reference guide on the back of the book, if you guys can see that there. It's got your blinded, flat-footed, frightened, shaken, invisible, and grabbed, which is also inside the book. There's a lot more terms and everything, and it shows you like line of sight, who's got cover. That the ogre has cover to Marisil and Kyra. So let's go ahead and open it up to the first page. You're gonna see this dungeon here. That's all laid out for you. This is going to be your very first dungeon that you would run as a brand new GM to the Pathfinder series. And it shows you your doors, it shows you all the creatures you're going to have, and then it has everything numbered, and you can actually go ahead and take the mat that's in the game and write the numbers on the designated areas in the map, and then it will be a lot easier for you to reference the map to the book so you know what area everyone's in. Especially when they get to the fountain, because they can split off, and some can go in here to this gemstone altar, or they can go in here to the goblin feud, and then they can both rally and meet at the deadly pool, and so on and so forth. So the reference is kind of nice to have for when you're going into multiple rooms. And then we can see on this side that we have the table of contents. It has the authors, it has the cover artist, interior artist, creative director, editor-in-chief, senior editor, and then Paizo's webpage, paizo.com/beginnerbox, and everything. And it goes right into everything that you're going to learn to be a good GM for the Pathfinder series. So it tells you the Game Master's role. It's going to show you how running the adventure, and the first adventure actually starts here on page 3. So you're going to have this small paragraph, 2 paragraphs here, read this, and then you're going straight into a dungeon. And it's going to give you everything that you need to run that dungeon. You're not even going to need to read all of the book to be able to run it. You can if you want. I suggest reading, at least grazing over it. So when you go to reference like for battle checks and stuff, you know where to find it. So it's going to give you this first scenario. It's going to show you how to do everything. It's going to show you how, tell you how to do initiative, where players roll for initiative and the monsters roll for initiative, and then they're all put in order for attacking and everything. And then it shows you in certain rooms where they're open to explore, there's no encounters there, so on and so forth. This room, I've done some different things with this room and altered it my own way. Every once in a while, I've only run this with this room twice. My very first time, I didn't want it to be ruined for the whole group, because Anna just wanted to run through it to kind of see how it worked and everything, and I actually had a water elemental pop up inside this fountain, and she thought that she was going to have to fight it, when actually it started speaking to her and was just saying, you know, those that drink from the fountain beware. And it was a little more elaborate than that, but you know, that's kind of what I kind of like that I could build on top of the scenario that's already here. Or you can just run it as is, and then it was to help the heroes, because that's your job as a DM, is to help heroes. So I did the water elemental to talk to her and say, those that drink from the fountain beware. There's certain checks that you can do and certain skills that you can have to check certain fountains. Like this fountain in particular, if someone was to throw something in it, like if they pee in it, or I mean, because heroes can do anything, so I know me saying that sounds terrible, but that's like the worst thing I can think of. It'll actually make the fountain turn off, and all of its magical abilities will go away, and come back after a certain time period. I had one of my players, they actually pulled their vial out and filled it up with water to use it later. So, because they didn't know what it did, and then one of the other players drank from it, and now he knows what it does. So he does have it for uses later. I like how it breaks down everything, what what kind of gem is on the altar, stuff like that. And this is set up to where you can actually reuse the dungeon map itself. And I have a character right now that is unconscious in this room, room 5, in Spider's Nest. And basically the best way to show you guys how you can alter the game a little bit is to just tell you what I've done as a GM myself. This spider, because I don't want to kill anybody off in the first scenario, especially when they're new players. And me with being a new GM, I don't want to discourage anyone to play with me and think that I'm just like straight to the book, hardcore, gonna kill you off. But this spider has knocked my it's my only wizard. We have 2 rogues running, so the wizard is actually unconscious, and when they're unconscious, the enemy will usually keep attacking, but I didn't want to kill her. So, because she's a new player, everyone that's playing is new player. I'm a new GM, so I wanted to, keep everybody in the game. So what I did is that this spider actually triggers when somebody's within 5 feet, which is an adjacent space next to the spider. So this is where the spider starts, and then these are all adjacent spaces. The webbing here that you see, that is specially marked in the book and not on the map that you use, is also capable of catching heroes and making them get stuck in there, and then they have to roll for a check to get out. But anyways, the 5-foot trigger, she was unconscious, and instead of keeping attacking her, I actually made the spider retreat because she went unconscious, so the spider thought she was dead, is how I played the story out. And so the spider went back into his webbing and hide, so nobody really knows that where he's going to pop up next. And I can have him pop up anywhere in this room, really anywhere in the dungeon, but I'm going to try to keep it to this room because we've also got one of the rogues was right behind the wizard coming through this doorway right here. So they're both venturing in here, and I haven't even revealed the other things that are inside the room as far as this. And the reason I'm not saying out loud is because one of my players is here in the other room, so I'm not going to tell you what's held in that there. One of the things that I want to tell you guys that was kind of funny. They went into this room here, and there was a chest, and then later they found out that there was 2 straw mats laying there, and I was like, well, let's put the proper symbol there. And I told Anna, I was like, yeah, just draw 2 circles and put dots in between, inside of each circle, because to represent a large chest. And one of the other players was like, is that really the symbol? I was like, no, but I was just seeing if Anna would catch on and not draw it, but she did draw it. I'm just like skipping right over it. But basically it's all showing the same thing. You know, they've got the different rooms have their creatures, they have their treasures. This one is a significant one because they'll be encountering him, but they could come over here and try to do this before, try to just avoid him. He's going to attack whether they like it or not, but get over here to grab this. And this is a +1 Dragonbane longsword. Basically that's going to give them bonuses against the dragon. The certain attributes that it gives them are just it's got like its basic attributes as a sword itself, and then it has extra attributes that will give them even more power if they're going against a dragon in particular. Well, you can see the handles there's the dragon's tail and the head of it, so it like gives them an extra power, and you don't have to remember that. Just kind of look through the description and it tells you right here. And also this thing has 8,300 worth of gold points, so it is a very valuable sword. So then it goes, after that first scenario, then it tells you about game mastering. So I read this before I played the scenario. I also had a week to do it before GMing my first game, and it gives you all the tools that you're going to need. It's the best thing. Role playing is like the best thing that I've ever played thus far, and it's like the peak of gaming. But because you get to use your imagination, and the heroes can do whatever they want. I had one hero who was like, can I stand on a statue? And I was like, sure, you have to make an acrobatics check though. And if they didn't, I was going to make them take like a point of damage or something, because they attempted to jump on it, they lost their balance and fell off and bumped their elbow or something. But she ended up making the check, and she was standing on top of the statue for a while. And then when we finally got back to her, she was like, well, how do I get off? I'm like, well, you have to make an acrobatics check, and that's going to be your action for your turn. So, I let people, I let my heroes do what they want, but that consequence ended up in her losing a turn pretty much. So it gives you like preparing for the game. Like, you're gonna need a pad of paper, you're gonna need dice, you're gonna need the hero's handbook and the Game Master Guide. Now, this game comes with a standard set of polyhedral dice. I have a bag so that everyone can have their own set. We've got the like rounded diamond shaped ones. I don't like those, but Anna uses them. These orange ones here are the original dice that came with the game. They come with the starter box. And if you guys haven't seen our unboxing, the unboxing is up, so if you want to check that out, it'll show you everything. This video is only going to highlight for the Game Master Guide. And it shows running a session, gives you descriptions of that, really good details. The artwork, it's nice to have there, to be able to look at it and everything, and I think it'd be really cool if they like came out with like a Pathfinder movie or something. Obviously they wouldn't call it Pathfinder, just call it like the adventure, the story of, and then give it like the monk's name, or call it the story of Kyra or something. And then it shows wrapping up a session using a published adventure. One of the examples I can use for wrapping up a session is that we had some players that had to leave before we actually got done with the whole dungeon. So what I've done was in my pad is I wrote the number to each room. So like in room 1, I just showed that it was cleared, everyone got their XP, and there's a these are notes for this is the customized scenario that I wrote. Here's what I have here. So area 1's cleared. Area 2, I show that Ashley took the key for the chest, and that room was also cleared. Area 3 cleared. There was nothing significant about that, but I wanted to remember that she had the key from that room in case I wanted to use that key as something new in a new scenario or in a later dungeon, or kind of mix up something in this dungeon later that's not there right now. Area 4, I showed that the stone retrieved by Ashley. That was she's our wizard right now, sitting unconscious over in that other room I was talking about with the spider. But she holds that stone that was in the altar, and that's worth, I think, maybe 4,000 gold points or so. So that's what I did for wrapping up a session. And then using a published adventure, you can go to paizo.com. They've got some on there. What we're going to do is actually grab the Rise of the Rune Lord adventure path book, and also the Skull and Shackles. Seeing that we already play the adventure card games, we thought it would just be nice to just grab those and go with it. I'm really looking forward to also doing the one with the snow, and I'm trying to remember what it is. But anyways, here's 12 stories that you can go off of. And they're numbered 1 through 12. You don't have to do them in any particular order, but they do kind of give you a basis of the next adventure. Here's a map that they've drawn out for you, and you can draw it out on the mat they give you with a dry erase marker, and it wipes clean. It comes right off, and so you'll read through this, and eventually you'll get to the ruins of Raven's Watch, which that scenario or that dungeon is this dungeon that they've drawn on page 25 of the Game Master's Guide. So you'll go here and you'll read, the basics. It shows you the map, which was in there, the story, and then it says adding details. So I'll read the first sentence for you. It says, that's all we're going to give you to do for you. We've given you the basic plot of the adventure along with a map of the chambers. So, and then it goes on to say that you need to fill in the blanks and everything else. Now, if you guys go out and buy just the core rulebook, you're going to be short a lot of stuff. You're not going to have any pawns. You won't have any stands. You're not going to get dice. You won't get any monsters in that book. You will get some more races and classes, such as like orcs and half elves and stuff like that. But you won't be getting any of the dice or the pawns or anything. And the pawns I'm talking about are your characters and stuff, and those black stands that were in that bag as well. And you won't be getting any monsters to put in your dungeon, stuff like that. So I would highly suggest, if you're going to do Pathfinder the RPG, then I would get the beginner box. Even if you've played RPGs before, and you're just now starting out with Pathfinder, it's not so much that you're learning the game, but it's new creatures and everything else, and it's a lot different from D&D visually. I've not played D&D, so I can't say really much anything about it mechanically. Visually, I feel like Pathfinder is more attractive as well, as far as creatures and the races and everything else.
We love Paizo.
Yeah, and Anna just said we love Paizo. So here it's showing like walls, breaking objects, armor class, hardness, hit points, energy attacks, and I just started learning from the core rulebook that there's actually, anytime somebody uses their weapon in a melee combat, they actually take -2 damage to their weapon, and then eventually their weapons break down over time. So, and when we've been playing, I try to remember everything that happens in like World of Warcraft, like WoW, on PC, just to remember to incorporate that while I'm GMing, because there's a lot of stuff that simulates in that I'm supposed to be simulating in the game. Like when somebody uses their ammo, which WoW quit doing that, and I don't mean to cross-reference, but that's the only role-playing that I can really incorporate. But Ashley, our wizard, has a crossbow, and she starts out with so many bolts, and then she's already fired 2, so I have to remember that she's down 2 bolts, and she also has to write that down in her equipment and everything else. So this one talks about doors, like the wooden doors, stone doors, and stuff like that, and everything else. And there was one time there was 2 PCs, and they were stupid fly. They were standing in front of a stone door. Well, another PC walked up and said, "Can I open the door for them?" I was like, "Well, you're going to have to reach in between them. It's a little crowded, and you're only going to use one hand. So I'm going to say, yeah, you can attempt it. You can go for your strength check, but because you're only pushing with one hand, then you're going to have to cut it in half and clear it that way." So they went ahead and rolled for it. They didn't get it. I think they rolled like 3 or 4, and they needed to roll at least a 10. So technically they rolled a 2 because they had to cut in half. This one, I haven't touched on this a whole lot. This is traps. These are arrow traps, pit traps, poison dart traps, swinging axe traps, burning hands trap. Our scenario is very far from being over, and this is our first dungeon that was in the front of the book. It's very easy to just plug one of these in there and just be like, hey, you walked into a room, you tripped a wire that was on the ground, now there's axes swinging at you, and then they can make a reflex check, and then they can either avoid getting hit, or they will fail the check and they will get hit. So it's kind of cool. I shouldn't say kind of cool. It's really cool. It's awesome. There's just a lot of stuff that you can just put it in there, and then whatever happens. I probably won't put a trap like that in there that like triggers off as soon as I walk through a door. Although it would be hilarious. But I'm too nice. So, but I keep it challenging. They did get to where they were talking too much, and there were some people still outside the dungeon right before they were getting ready to come in, and one of them was the one balancing on the statue, and they weren't moving along, so everybody took 2 fire damage from goblins up on top of the dungeon, and so on and so forth. So these 2 pages showing forest terrain and swamp terrain, and it goes into like when you're going through a swamp, your movement's going to be slowed. If you're going through like a forest terrain, you may be slowed because of vines and stuff. And this guy, you can see, he's like getting trapped in vines and whatnot. Then we have like mountain terrain and desert terrain. And desert terrain, usually your PCs are going to want water skins so that they can last in the desert for long periods of time. Canteens filled with water before they leave, stuff like that. And then mountain terrain, they're probably going to want to wear warm gear, and this is where you can actually, like, in the desert and in the mountains, you could probably use the fatigue factor, like everybody moves at half speed or 3/4 of speed, stuff like that. And usually only do that because it's severely hot and severely cold. Now if they're in the forest, it's usually warm, but then again it's kind of damp and moist.
City adventures, if somebody's inside, they can go, if they're in the city and you do one in there, it can be just as simple as somebody needs to go to the store, somebody else wants to go to the tavern. I actually am going to throw a tavern in my next deal where they go back to the town, and if they go in the tavern, they have the option to play their gold against each other that they won from the last scenario, and I'll actually have a deck of playing cards where they can play like poker or something if they wanted to do that to gamble their gold. So you can like incorporate other things, and it doesn't have to be a night where your session is completely fighting monsters and stuff. Sometimes you just you want to kick back and hang out at the pub and just play some cards or something. And you can do it that way. So that way they're still playing, and then you can give them like small amounts of XP, like 5 XP if you win, and 4 if you lose, or something like that. You can still give them a reason that they would want to be in the tavern, why they would want to play. If they go in the tavern and drink, you could give them a reason just to make it fun, that if they go to make a check, instead of doing pluses and minuses, since they're drunk, you could do like flip a coin or something, and then heads they hit, tails they don't, and stuff like that. So this one's talking about environment hazards. Well, this one's talking about spellcasters and hiring them, but we'll get that here in a second. So environmental hazards: acid, cold, darkness, falling, heat, ice, lava, smoke, starvation and thirst, suffocation. Suffocation is probably something I'll never use, because that's just there's too many different ways that suffocation can go. That's just like a phobia, I guess. So the hiring spellcasters. So sometimes PCs return to town, bloody, poisoned, cursed, and suffering from some magical attack that they can't cure, and hiring an NPC spellcaster such as a priest from a temple, a wizard mentor, one of the PCs, and so on, to fix them, lets them get back to adventuring quickly. So instead of them going and seeing a doctor or something, or what do you call those guys? Whatever they are, they could just hire a spellcaster to heal them. Which I would consider those my doctors, I guess. We get into magical items. There's a magical armor, magical shields. These are the ones that are like worth 4,000, 3,000, 1,000. There's one worth 5,300. Mithril chainmail. So, magical weapons, potions, rings, and this is just that's only 4 pages. That's very small. Now the core rule book is going to give you a lot more of that stuff, and everything else. And you're going to get a lot of monsters in the rule book, core rule book, and all that. But it's a fantastic way to start an RPG. Just you get the box. If you guys don't think Pathfinder's worth it, pick up a Pathfinder box and then pick up the D&D starter box and tell me which one you think you should buy. You can tell just by weight-wise which one you're going to get better, which one you're going to get more value. These are the stuff that you can use inside your towns, where you can sell stuff, or you can have it in your dungeon. You can do it either way. You can use it as loot in your dungeons, which these I would probably use as loot in my dungeons, not so much as purchasable inside. Maybe the stuff that's 250 gold points, that's fine to use inside of a I mean, you guys can do whatever you want. It's your path, it's your deal. But the ones that I won't be putting inside of a store is the ones that are 4,800. Like, you're gonna have to quest and work your ass off to get that one. So here's a complete this is monsters. This is a complete breakdown of how everything works on a monsters card, and it shows you, their AC. It's going to show you of 13. and that's going to be their armor. So they have a 13. So anybody that goes up against this guy, they would have to check. They would have to do a D20, check 13 or higher. If they hit the 13 or higher, then they roll whatever weapon or cast the spell or whatever that is. They would roll that dice for that spell or that weapon, and then that would be how many hit points they would get, and stuff like that. So I thought that was kind of a cool mechanic that's already embedded in the game, and you don't have to make that stuff up. There's been a lot of times where I make it easier, and for our first scenario, I told them that I would make all checks a 10 on a D20, and it's worked out so far. I think I'm going to start using the higher ones and start using whatever the creatures actually have. Like this guy's 15, he's 19, which makes sense. He's an air elemental. His speed, if he flies, is 100 feet. His initiative is +9, so I mean, being wind, he's going to be hard to hit. So he's a 19. He's also level 3, or level 3. It says CR, it doesn't say level, it just says CR of 3. The guys that my guys are running against, they're running against him. He's a level 8. But for the scenario they're running, he's only 54 health points, where his full version is 76. And that's just the way that they set it up for the first scenario. So you can see you get a lot of monsters in this first book, which is really cool. The only thing that I was kind of disappointed in is that I was hoping they would give like a small book of scenarios that you could run through, because I know running through this one has given me a lot of information, but if we could have like a second one. Here's a water elemental that I had pop up in the water fountain when Anna was playing by herself. And so that's just a quick look at the monsters. And then here's random encounters. So basically how this happens is that, like the goblin, you'd roll roll a d20, and then you'll get a 1. If you get a 1 to a 12, you go goblin. 13 to 14, you get a skeleton. 25 to 29, you get a dire rat. But that's based on your credit or your XP. Like if you're only going to do 800 XP points in one room, then you could get up to 4 zombies, because they're 200 apiece. So you get 4 zombies because they're 200 XP. So if you have 800 XP to spend in one room, and that's where you're going to put, as if they beat that room, they get an 800 XP split amongst. Well, it's not split amongst; they all get that. But it breaks it down. There's a chart on the GM screen that'll break down how many players get what. But let's say if one person went into this room and they beat all four zombies, then they would get the full 800 XP for that room, for clearing it and all that stuff. And you can divvy out the XP however you want. That's just the way we run it. Here is the Sandpoint and facts about Sandpoint: its population, its mayor, its clerics, rogues, wizards. Amiko Kajitsu. I don't even know if I've got that character in the beginner box. Anyways, this is a map of Sandpoint, so it gives you all of that, and it talks about Rusty Dragon, and I think that's one of the taverns. But then it gives you the names of everything. And then here it shows that the circles that's where the town is, so that would be Sandpoint way up here, and it's labeled Sandpoint. And then it shows farmstead, so all these little squares right here are the farmstead. And then there's an adventure site, which is at the Old Light. You got Bird Cruncher Goblin Lair, you got Raven's Watch, Blackfang's Dungeon. So we started in Sandpoint, went all the way over to Blackfang's Dungeon, and then the next scenario is called Raven's Watch, which will be the next one. And then the other places you can just kind of make it up, or you don't even have to use those. You can go off to the Rise of the Rune Lord's path, and you'll start the same point there as well. So, the additional quests talks about deeper into the dungeon. The dungeon Blackfang was using has deeper levels below what could be hidden below the dragon's lair. So you can kind of take that and do a little spin-off of where they're already at. There's Goblin Hunt, there's Haunted Moors, Night Thieves, the Old Light, Pest Control, Pig Tongue, the Ogre. And then there's references. So like a 5-foot radius burst that shows you that person in the center of 2 crosshairs. And we go all the way around. A 10-foot, take your crosshairs, and then we go out to 2 squares, 2 squares, 2 squares, 2 squares, and everything in the center. And then a 20-foot radius, you could stand here and take out this whole block, or hit that whole block. And then there's a 15-foot cone. Say if you're standing here, then it's going to hit this corner, go this way 15 feet, so it's 5, 10, 15, 5, 10, 15, and that's going to hit the 2 blocks there, and the center one. So these 3, and these 3. And it talks about 30-foot lines, like how they can come up, they can split off and they go up, or they can go up and so on and so forth. Or you can go straight diagonally, but you only get 4 squares that way. This was a one that I used a lot. It's common skill. Common skill DCs. So like anything that's like climb knotted rope, climb a rope against a wall, guide mount with your knees, or jump 5 feet. That's a check of 5 on a D20. And then they go all the way up to DC 30. So you would check it with a D20 on a 30. So hopefully you've got attributes to boost you. And then the last 2 pages give you all of your conditions, just like they did on the back. It's going to give you like your sickened, your staple, staggered, unconscious. It also gives you invisible. So if you have like a vial and you drink the invisibility, then you're going to be cloaked. And to simulate that, we take the character off the stand and just have an empty stand walking around like they're invisible. Stuff like that. So there's ways to kind of simulate what's going on. And then here's the index, and then it's where to go from here, and it shows the core rulebook, the bestiary, and the Inner Sea World Guide, which I will not be grabbing this. I will be getting the bestiary. I already have my core rulebook. Bestiary is going to give you a lot more monsters and everything. And then the last thing they have here is the common map symbols. So when I was telling Anna to draw the chest, it was supposed to be a box with lines through it and then 2 black solid lines going through it to simulate what a chest was. And instead, I had her draw 2 circles with dots in the center, making a chest, but not the chest that was depicted in the game. So that is a in-depth look at what you're going to get in the Game Master's Guide for the Pathfinder role-playing game, published by Paizo Publishing. We are only in the first scenario, and we are already talking about buying like almost all the books. It's really fun. If it comes down to just me and Anna playing it, I can make dungeons for a single person to run solo. If anybody you out there are in the Indianapolis area and would like to play Pathfinder role-playing game with us, or would like to run solo and need a GM to run you solo by yourself, we'd be more than happy to do that with you. But if Anna's home, you will probably have to run with her because she loves this game. And we're definitely addicted. We started with the card game, and now we're on the role-playing game. So we're definitely addicted now. So we will go ahead and wrap this up, and that is it. That's a in-depth look of the Game Master's Guide. So if you guys are looking to venture into the Pathfinder role-playing game, the beginner box is probably where I would begin. And please subscribe to our channel and continue to watch the upcoming videos, because we will also be showing all of the other components in depth that are coming out of the Pathfinder beginner box. Alright, so we just took you guys through an in-depth look at Pathfinder role-playing game, the Game Master's Guide. The reason that me and Anno have decided to take you through this is because we got onto Paizo and we saw descriptions and pictures, but we really didn't see the actual contents of everything except for pictures. So doing the in-depth look, I'm hoping gets a lot more people involved into the Pathfinder role-playing game. And also join the Pathfinder Society, and then join everyone. We're hoping to join the Pathfinder Society as well. We have not done that yet because we're complete noobs at this. But hopefully what I showed you was a good enough detail to get you the information you needed, and hopefully get you guys into the beginner box. So it's a great place to start. We were mostly intimidated by the role-playing game because we really didn't know how to set stuff up and everything, but we realized Pathfinder, Paizo gives you everything you're going to need inside the beginner box. So you're going to have your Game Master Guide, you're going to have your Hero's Handbook, you're going to have everything you need. They even added a new book called a Transition Guide to take your person, even if you max out at level 5 or if you don't. You can just go ahead and go over to the Rise of the Rune Lords, because they do 1 to 20 on the levels, but they have a transition guide to take you from the beginner box over to your core game, the full role-playing game. So I hope you guys enjoyed this in-depth look at Pathfinder role-playing game, Game Master's Guide. And as always, I'm Tim with the Geeked Up Gaming Review Group.